Today's movie has me thinking, are there certain subjects that you just can't handle when it comes to horror movies? Are there certain subjects you think should be out of bounds? Or if not out of bounds, just something that you're like, oh, this film's about that, I don't think I'm gonna watch it. That's today's question for you to answer down in the comments. I'm Adam Caesar, this is Project Black T-Shirt. Hello everyone, bonjour. Last week we took the first week off that I've taken in a very long time, but this is Project Black T-Shirt, the channel where I watch a new release horror movie or a old release horror movie, and then I pair them with a book you should read if you like that movie. Today we're going to be taking a look at the brand new film Revenge. It just opened in theaters, limited release throughout the country, and it's got a VOD release. But interestingly, the film's being released by Shudder, even though right now you can go see it in a theater and you can pay to rent it, and you'll get the little Shudder title card. It's not a film that's currently available to watch on Shudder. It is a Shudder exclusive at some point. They're just saying later in the year. I thought it was coming out today, so I was like, oh, that's the movie I'll slate to review. But no, it's well worth your $7 or your movie ticket price or whatever, and we're going to talk about why. So first of all, Revenge, as its title may clue you into, is a revenge film. It is a very bloody revenge film. It is a French production. It is the subgenre of revenge film that includes films like I Spit on Your Grave and Thriller, A Cruel Picture, and Miss 45, female-centric revenge films. But those are 70s films, and director Coralie Fargeat is very much not from the 70s. She is very much from today, and she very much puts a modern spin on a subgenre that I'm sure there is debate about whether or not we should leave it in the past a little bit, have these movies be relics of a certain era of exploitation filmmaking. And what's miraculous, I think, about Revenge is that it is very much a film about today. I'm sure this is going to be the movie that launched a million think pieces as far as the kind of Me Too revenge movie, and that was how it was sold, and that's how the movie's kind of marketed as. But the movie itself is a lot more subdued in its politics. In some ways, just a very simple, straightforward revenge picture. Our main character, Jen, played by Italian actress Matilda Lutz, far and away a film built around Lutz and her performance, and she is incredible in it. Very tough, but vulnerable, and very three-dimensional and very fully realized character, even though a lot of that characterization comes when she's in scenes by herself. She has to basically just emote and tell us what we need to know without knowing a whole lot of backstory about her, other than she's seeing this guy, he's a married guy, he has a wife, clearly well off, clearly in a position where he could maybe help her career, because he talks about the idea of getting her a job in LA. They fly out to this remote desert location, this very nice house, where he and his friends are gonna go hunting. But before they go hunting, he's gonna, take some time with his mistress, enjoy the weekend, and then his friends are gonna arrive. His friends arrive a little bit early. They're strapped. They've got shotguns and rifles and stuff like that. And right away we're like, who the hell are these guys and what are they gonna do? It is a kind of Straw Dogs feeling to that initial part of the movie right there. Then things happen as they do in these movies. The inciting event unfolds a little differently than we're used to in films like this, and then it becomes this almost Mad Max-like trip through the desert with her trying to track these guys down, trying to survive while she's almost mortally injured, and trying to take her revenge. It's a great, very tense cat and mouse movie that, and this isn't a spoiler to say, becomes very, very bloody. It's not exactly a slow build, but there is kind of a bloodless first act. But once the blood starts flowing, it flows freely and gorily, and it will remind you, especially because most of the dialogue is in French. They switch between French and English, and it depends on what characters are talking, and you almost get characterization through the decision to, like, when do we go French, when do we go English. But once the blood starts, it will remind you of that kind of early 2000s heyday of the new French extremity, or of extreme French horror, things like High Tension, Frontiers, Inside. It is so gory and so over the top in its gore, even though the gore is semi-realistic. This isn't like splatstick, even though at certain times it almost reaches that level. But the whole movie is stylized. We have these sun-drenched pastel colors. It's like, it really is Miami Vice meets Mad Max in its color palette and how audacious the style of the movie is. But this is a first-time director, Fargeat. This is her first feature film, and it is blow away how well put together this movie is, how big this movie feels, how kind of like, even though I rented it VOD and I was watching it on my home TV, I really, really wish that it was playing in Philadelphia. I wish there was a way for me to have gone and see this film in a theater, because the bigger the screen, the better. It's a big feeling movie, even though it's about, 4 characters. It like has only 4 characters. There's like a helicopter pilot in it for one scene, but other than that, there's 4 actors on screen at any one time. And most of the time we're with Matilda Lutz's character. And what's interesting about Jen as a quote-unquote final girl, since that term has been in the zeitgeist recently, what's interesting about Jen is that she is definitely not your archetypal virginal, even though there is debate as to whether that is even the archetype. She's not that kind of, pure woman who becomes a ruined woman and has to take revenge. There's none of that. There's none of that kind of patriarchal, kind of moralistic bend to revenge. She is a high-powered guy's mistress who's like, undeniably sexy and understands her sexuality at the very beginning of the film. And when terrible things happen to her against her will, and she's pushed into a situation where she needs to be, that kind of final girl warrior. It feels completely natural, and it feels about as non-exploitative as a film like this has ever felt. So if you're a fan of this genre, if you like these kinds of movies, you're going to absolutely love Revenge. And I can't wait to see what this director does next. Unbelievable movie, well worth the rental if you at all think you can handle it, because it is an extreme movie. It's not a jump out scarefest horror movie. It's not going to be one of those things where you're like, I'm scared to watch this. It's a movie that's going to make you uncomfortable, even though it has tiny glimmers of lightness, tiny glimmers of kind of fist pumping, especially with its like propulsive synth soundtrack and really interesting editing and really dazzling kind of camera work. It isn't a slog. It isn't a film that is there to make you depressed and kind of run you into the ground, but it is an extreme film. So that was Coralie Fargeat's Revenge, now on VOD, soon at some point to be on Shudder. I'm not sure. Today's book recommendation I've talked about on the channel before, but I've talked about it like my first 1 or 2 videos on the channel, and no one watched those, so this is fair game. It's House of Psychotic Women by Kayla Janice. The full subtitle is An Autobiographical Topography of Female Neurosis in Horror and Exploitation Films. And that is a subtitle that makes this book sound very academic, overly academic. It is not. What's great about this, as far as reference books and academic horror books go, and books about horror film criticism, this is very, very approachable because it is written in an autobiographical style. It's almost a memoir, but Kayla Janice charts her kind of life alongside, her life and movie watching alongside female neuroses in horror movies and exploitation films. She talks about some of the films we talked about at the beginning of this show. I'm sure if there's ever a revised edition, she will talk about Revenge. But it's a really, really illuminating, eye-opening book. And it doesn't read like a reference book. There's a reference section in the back that kind of has capsule reviews of the films discussed. But mostly, it reads kind of in a linear, autobiographical fashion. Very, very interesting approach to horror film criticism. And just a beautiful book. It's like almost a coffee table book, even though it's very substantive in the material in it. But it's got pictures. It's got like a full color section in the middle. I highly recommend, from Fab Press, I highly recommend picking it up. I'll put the links down below, as I do with everything I always talk about. So that was Revenge and House of Psychotic Woman. I'm Adam Caesar. If you'd like to find out more about me or my books, I write novels, short stories, novellas, sometimes comic books, If you'd like to sample some of those, you can get on my mailing list on my website. I have links down below as I have links for everything else. If you like this video, please hit like. If you really like this video, please subscribe. Check out my other videos. Have a great day. See you next Friday.